Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I welcome you all into the next online lecture, and I say you good afternoon. Thank you very much. I hope that you are actually at homes, staying safe out of the corona disease. Well, as you remember that I started saying something on psycholinguistic, so I'm slowly taking you into the concept actually of psycholinguistic, because since this is a very technical subject, therefore I have to take care of actually your level, and I should try to teach you in such a way that at least something comes out of it, right? So on the page you see here, psycholinguistics was actually defined in the letter, but in the meanwhile, in the coming lecture, this term will be again and again with new interpretation be presented to you people, so that you can have a good idea on it. You see here, on the front page here, the names of actually the people who have given this lecture, but I would try to make you people understand of it. All right. You see here, the baboons or the gorilla you see there in the picture. You see here a picture of a baby, and you see here, the very famous man, Noam Chomsky, who really revolutionized the field of linguistics, and you also look at actually the human mind actually, with its interpretations of different parts, and similarly you find here the mind actually of an ape and a human. What does all this mean? That actually psycholinguistic actually talks about all these possibilities that are directed and related to the language there. All right. I should be more faster, because this is a long lecture. Here, for example, the question that why should one go to a seminar on psycholinguistics? Because a language, in psycholinguistics we study even language acquisitions, and which tells us the manner in which we unconsciously learn language in our childhood. You see, language acquisition that takes place unconsciously, right? And the second language acquisition, it tells us about the way in which we can add another language to our existing knowledge of. But normally the second language learning or acquisition takes place after the first language is mastered. And second language acquisition furthermore offer insights into how two languages interact and illuminates the phenomenon of the interference, right? So this we learn actually there. Again, then we talk about here first language acquisition reveals the stages through which we as very young children go through in learning our later native language. These stages teach us about what areas of language are central and what are less important, right? And then first language acquisition offers evidence for the hypothesis of many scientists that a certain amount of knowledge is innate. Like we do have actually the controversy. We will be talking about its the separate theories in language acquisition. That is the nativist standpoint, and we will also be taking the behaviorist or the empiricist standpoint here, which if you look actually, the first language offer evidence for the hypothesis of many scientists that a certain amount of knowledge is innate. We are born with actually such knowledge. We are born with that, right? Like for example, I used to give an example of a juicer in my MPhil class. That for example, juicer, the major function of a juicer is to produce or to make, you see, juice of any kind, like of peach, of apple, of orange, of pomegranate, and so many other. So similar is the case actually with the system the system, with the innate ability that we are genetically pre-programmed. We have been given that system, and the system is not given only for a single language, that is either our native language Pashto, Urdu, English, Chinese, or any other, but that is only for any kind of language, right? So that is actually the nativist standpoint, and not simply learned by observation or habit, the empiricist point. While the empiricists or even the behaviorists, they think otherwise. They say that there is nothing here, that we have been only given tabula rasa. Tabula rasa. What tabula rasa means? A thin blank plate that we have been given. So all that comes from environment, and that comes actually from external. The order of stages is of relevance when looking at other areas of linguistics, such as language change, because the division of phenomena and categories into central and peripheral acquisitional hierarchy is reflected in the types of language change, which are attested in the world's languages. What it means that actually the order of learning, actually the first language, are clearly defined. So therefore, and they are applicable and attested from all over the world languages, with irrespective of the environment the children share. The progression of language acquisition furthermore throws light on our cognitive development, in such help us to better understand our psychological makeup, right? Mostly in psycholinguistics we talk about many other aspects, but this particular type of lecture I'm going to talk about mainly actually the language acquisitions, all right, here little bit, in order to familiarize the concept of language acquisition, that so that you can have in ideas of it there, right? On broader level, language acquisition is concerned with learning more than one language. While monolingualism is often the rule in modern Western society, most of the world's population is at least bilingual. This bilingualism is social and individual. Monolingualism means the ability of speaking one language. Bilingualism means actually this ability of speaking two languages. And multilingualism means the ability and capability of speaking more than two languages. But remember, in the world, this concept of in the world, nobody is monolingual. In the broader sense, it's okay. For example, if a person speaks Pashto, so and he doesn't know other languages, so on the surface of it, he seems to be a monolingual. But if you look, but actually within even the Pashto language, there are different dialects, which are spoken across, the areas. If the speaker is capable of knowing all the dialects of a language, so in the broader sense, he is also a multilingual there, right? Now I'm right from the very beginning, I'm sharing from this particular presentations, the areas for presentation and term essays. So please just look at these area, and these areas can be easily actually found, you see, and you can talk, and it gives you direction to know exactly the different aspects there. So you all are requested to look at these things and try to present them then, right? Try to come up with the assignments. I'll not now, but after a lecture or two, I'll be asking you about this topic, that you have to take your topics for presentations and actually for essay writing. Like you see there, language acquisition and related areas development, biological maturation and language acquisition. You have to do something on it. How does the actual maturation, biological maturation, for example, there is a kind of link, there is a kind of link in the biological maturation. Language also, with the passage of time, it grows up, and similar is the case with the human biological. And you see there that every organ or every part you see of our body has got actually double function. For example, with tongue we eat, but similarly at the same time we also actually speak with the tongue. And you can see the hands, you can see the mouth, you can see the lungs, And I mean, you see that through lungs we breathe, but similarly, I mean, breathing helps actually in the speech there. So you must look at biological maturation in language acquisition, linguistic and cognitive development. That does linguistics and cognitive, I mean, cognitive development happen simultaneously? In at what stage linguistic development is more faster than cognitive. Cognitive mean mental development. And social aspect of language acquisition, that how does the social language, the aspect of language. So these are actually the areas which are enabling you just to come up there. Acquisition of phonology and morphology, acquisition of syntax, right? That how does the syntax of a child develops? Right here, further we can see that single word, two word, and complex sentences. You must look at that. You can you can give example of all these things. Syntax and later language acquisitions. You can also study there the acquisition of meaning relations, and expanding vocabulary. You can search and find. All right. First and second language acquisitions. Comparing natural L1 means first language acquisition and second language acquisitions, right? And control and natural language acquisitions you can also find. First language acquisition in other areas of linguistics, you can find psycholinguistics, language change, speech errors, language pathology, and language universal. Number 7, you find acquisition of more than one language. Naturally, you can also do and write something that acquisition of more than one language, natural bilingualism. Like for example, if a child, I mean, is exposed to a natural environment where more than one language is spoken, that terms as a natural bilingualism. And there are theories and thoughts that if, I mean, here and these notes, up to 4 actually it is said that a child, but I have heard scholar and I have seen even children that if they are exposed to 7 different structurally language during the acquisition period, you see, so the child can pick up, I mean, those all structurally 7 different languages with ease, right? And then linguistic theory and language empiricism and generativism you can talk on. Well, again, I'm repeating. I'm repeating in hunting on the same tongue here, harping on the same psycholinguistic term here. Psycholinguistic, again, with reference to human psychology. It is a very broad scope, but frequently used with specific reference to the process of language acquisition, especially of one first language. And more general psycholinguistic covers the following areas. Again, is as it was discussed in the previous lecture, neurolinguistic, the study of language in the brain. So what exactly it does? This is a physical dimension of it to it, and is in the domain of neurologists concerned with impairments of language due to brain lesions. Lesions mean wounds, tumors, injuries, or stroke. It also has an observational domain, which is the concern of linguistics. You see, I have highlighted the important points here. Here, the certain phenomena like slips of the tongue, various performance error due to nervousness, tiredness, for instance, are examined for the insight which they might offer about the structure of language faculty in the human brain. You also can find language pathology. The breakdown of language has been studied intensively from at least 2 main angles. The first is that of the medicine, where attempts are made to help patients regain, at least partially, the ability to use language normally. Such patients are typically older people who have had a stroke, a burst blood vessels in the brain, in this case affecting the Broca or the Wernicke areas, or younger people who have been involved in accident, typically in a car or on a motorcycle, and have thus an impairment of the brain due to external injury. A third group is formed by patients who had had a tumor cancerous growth in the brain which impairs the speech process, pressing on either of the speech area. Fairly rare is a medical phenomenon though. Language disorder unknown in linguistics and medicine is aphasia. Aphasia or aphasia. Language disorder are known in linguistics, and there are many different types depending on the impairment or which a patient shows. There might be many impairment and issues. Then we is a term that just I discussed in the previous slide, Broca area. You must remember briefly that Broca area, that is the part of the brain which is approximately about the left temple, called after its discoverer the French Dr. Paul Broca, and which is responsible for speech productions. The speech production, is I'm speaking it now, I'm producing speech, I'm involving my phonology here. So this all speech production is related to the Broca areas. And then we have Wernicke areas. That is the part of the brain which is taken to be responsible for the comprehension of speech. Like it is located just about the left ear, named after Karl Wernicke, the German scientist who discovered the area in second half of the night. So Wernicke Broca area is related to language production, and Wernicke area is related to what? It is related to language comprehension. What takes place, when the language is produced, so then it is more important than it that how it is comprehended, right? So these two. Then we talk about speech errors like tongue phenomena. Tip of the tongue phenomenon. Tip of the tongue is that phenomenon of language, error. That, for example, you might have the word here in your brain, but when you try to speak it, so you forget to produce the same word actually, which is very much there, but it is not coming to your tongue. So this phenomenon is a tongue thought phenomenon, or tip of the tongue phenomenon, right? And then slip of the tongue. For some time we do experience slip of the tongue. For example, we want to say one word, but we cannot say that one word, but we say that we say one word, but we produce another word. So such phenomenon is actually slip of the tongue. Then language acquisition. Language acquisitions, what can we learn? A child learn any language, remember. However, this is in general the language of the parents, but it does not have to be the case. The language which the child is exposed to in the first year of his life is that which is learned. Normally, it is mentioned there. If the child is exposed to more than one language, or if he is exposed to more languages other than his parents, so he will also learn that. Here you see that in the environment the child learns these languages. 2 languages are not rare, 3 or more are unusual. However, what is important for the child is that both languages are spoken to an equal extent in the environment. If the 2 languages exist, you see, with the same intensity and with the same exposure, so then the child can pick them up. For instance, by each of the parents, and that there are no major tensions in the relationship to the person who speaks these languages. Otherwise, the child will probably develop a general dislike of the language of the individual, right? Language continues the process which can take place in any period of one's life. In the sense of first language acquisition, however, it refers to the acquisition unconscious learning. You do not think about it, but you unconsciously, learn a language of one's native language, or languages in the case of bilingual, during the first 6 or 7 years of one's life, roughly from birth to the time one starts school. During this time, normally language acquisitions takes place. Then the characteristics of language. This is instinct. You are born with it. You are supposed to get it. It is triggered by birth and takes its own course. Though of course linguistic input from the environment is needed for the child to acquire a specific language. Is an instinct language acquisition can be compared to the acquisition of binocular vision or binaural hearing. Like you see, for example, we binocular, it relates to vision, all right? It relates to actually to your eyes. And binocular simply is used for actually that instrument through which you can see distant objects. But here it means vision. For example, when you look at something, so both of your eyes are involved actually, and getting the vision for you there, both of the eyes. And binaural hearing, I mean, when the tones are presented to you there, so actually the tones, both of the ears, I mean, they actually get, I mean, the tone there, binaural, right? So it is very rapid. I mean, this acquisition is very rapid, all right? So and a very short compared to that need to learn a second language later in life. And it is very complete. The quality of the first language is far better than that of the second language learned later in life. One doesn't forget one's native language, though one might have slight difficulties remember words if you do not use for a long time, but you cannot forget that language. I mean, if you are taken in the early years of your life, you see, to another language setup, but when some of the years you have spent actually in learning the first language, so you would not actually, I mean, forget that. It doesn't require instruction. You don't need instruction to require. Though the parents, they try to correct their younger children, but still they recurse to what they have naturally learned. For example, Motherese. And there is a book I give you reference, How Languages Are Learned. So in that particular book, actually, the mother, the language of the mother, actually they come, we say that accommodation takes place. What is accommodation? Accommodation means that convergence or divergence. Sometimes when you try to speak in such a way to distance yourself from the speaker, that we term is divergence. And sometimes convergence, that when you try to feel yourself in, you see, in a speech community, you come down to the level and you try to bring ease actually in your language, and you divert yourself actually to their speaking style. That is actually term is that. So Motherese is a kind of actually help provided during the time of language acquisitions, that a mother comes down and try to correct actually her children. Well, so then what is the watershed that's separating first and second language? The ability to acquire language with a native speaker competence diminishes severely around puberty. Remember that the moment you grow up more and you just go towards puberty, you know. So there are two suggestions is why this is the case. Shortly before puberty, the letterization of the brain means letterization means the fixing of various functions to parts of the brain takes place, and this may lead to general inflexibility. And another thing, with puberty, various hormonal changes takes place in the body, and we technically become adult. So this may also lead to inflexibility, which means that a language acquisition cannot proceed to the conclusion it reaches. And moreover, I mean, if you become adult, so then your habits with the passage of time change too. I mean, and when your habits change, so the speed of language acquisitions, I mean, peters out. Peter means slows down, okay? And then you see here the distinction between the two. Acquisition is carried out in the first year of childhood and leads to unconscious knowledge of one's native, which is practically indelible, right? Note that acquisition has nothing to do with intelligence. Remember, children of different degrees of intelligence all go through the same process of acquiring their native language. It doesn't mean that if somebody is more intelligent, his IQ is more than the other, so he or she will pick up language more rapidly than the other. No, there isn't such thing, you know, which says that intelligent children learn language more faster than the less intelligent, or you see average. Learning of a second language is done later after puberty and is characterized by imperfection, and the likelihood of being forgotten. Learning leads to conscious knowledge, remember, right? Learning leads, so the you have become conscious while learning second language. And then first language acquisition, this is the acquisition of mother tongue. Chronology is important here. See, you are going to see here the chronology of it. The degree of competence acquired may vary from individual to individual and may be checked by later switching to another. Note that language acquisition is largely independent of intelligence, although individuals can and do differ in their mastery of open classes such as vocabulary, but basically it has nothing to do with that. Then bi and multilingualism. This is acquisition of two or more languages from birth or at least together in early childhood. The ideal situation where all languages are equally represented in the child's surrounding and where the child is in impartial relationship to each is hardly to be found in reality. So that of two or more languages, one is born to be the dominant, right? Second language acquisitions, obviously, when the first language, mother tongue, has been mastered, are acquired. So then, after that, the learning of the second language acquisition start. Typically, adult language acquisition, sometimes replaced by the term further language acquisition. Era. This is an incorrect feature in language acquisition, which occurs because of the stage at which the child is at a given time. Acquisition and is yet incomplete. Errors are regular and easily explainable. For instance, the use of weak verbs for strong verbs or the over applications of is plural means that you see weak forms actually during the acquisitions are morely used. For example, a child, if he comes to know that with this, if he comes to know that with the ed form, which is most commonly easy to get it, that it is aided with the second and the third form. So but the child, then he extends this principle there, like when he talks about the past, so he keeps on adding ed with every first form there. So this is actually a child comes to know that s is added for pluralization, and then he doesn't care for the irregular form like plural, for example, like sheep, like fish, but he keeps on using s, you see, with everyone, like for example fishes, right? And with everything for the pluralization, he does the same thing. Mistakes are obviously there. For performance error, emphasize that they arise, you see, on the spur of moment when speaking. So when the errors occur, it is nothing to do with the competence, that there's something wrong there, but there are certain external factors, like you are tired, you have fought with somebody, or your mood is off, psychologically you are not feeling well, your environment isn't good, you have recently gone through some trauma. So such things may making the performance error, right? Which are not there actually in your competence. While competence is the abstract ability to speak a language, the knowledge of a language which independence of its you have been given system there is no fault in the system, right? So that system actually internalizes the rules. And then performance, this is actually performance, this is the actual production of language that you do there. Its features do not necessarily reflect characteristics of performance. For example, when one is nervous, tired, drunk, one may have difficulty speaking coherently. This, however, doesn't mean that one cannot speak one's language. It doesn't mean, but necessarily there are some difficulties which are caused because of certain reason, like nervousness, tiredness, or drunkenness. Then we talk about acquisition and learning. Second language acquisition refers to a further language which is acquired after the first, usually after primary school. the acquisition of a second language never reaches the degree of proficiency of the first. Remember, it can never reach to there. And the reason for this is that the children start too late. In fact, they are usually teenager before being exposed to them. So I mean, the second language learning starts mostly in the formal setup, or when they become teenagers. All right. After puberty, one cannot learn a second language as well is the first, no matter how much time one invests in this. In this connection, linguists generally make the distinction between acquisition for the first language and learning for the second language after childhood. Then there are certain conditions actually for acquisitions. This is natural. I mean, you are naturally exposed to the language, so obviously natural flow is more faster than the artificial one, right? And then this is control. This is intervallic, if not to say sporadic. I mean, intervallic, I mean control that, for example, if a child finds, I mean, language productions just behind him, just around him there. So this is in certain intervallic. It's not sporadic. Intervallic means after certain intervals. Like, for example, if a child is there in a very rich linguistic environment, but after some time there an interval takes place. But sporadic means that language is spoken after a longer period of time, right? Furthermore, it takes place against the background of another language, usually the first language. One of the learners. In exceptional cases, acquisition can be both natural and controlled, where one obtains formal instruction or gives to oneself and lives in an environment where the target language is spoken. See, for example, though the children are exposed, I mean, to the natural language around them there, but still the factor of instruction takes place, though it has a role to play, but not that much there during the early years, because it has been experimented and seen and observed that the mothers are even the input given by the parents for the wrong things actually of the children. But after correction is given to them, still the children reverse to what they used to practice before, right? And with the passage of time, then they overcome actually the errors and mistake which they perform and they commit during their early. Then guided language acquisition. This is intermediary type between the two just discussed in its characteristics. By prescriptive correction on the part of the child's contact person, mother, father, corrections show the transfer of adult grammars to children, whereas natural language acquisition shows the gradual approximation of the child or the child's grammar to the adults. As I said before, note that the child is not corrected is often by his or her mother, as it one might imagine. Self-correction is most common at this stage, but not immediate, due to two factors. Most broadly speaking, because of the lack of communication here, intermediate correction may take place. And secondly, by consistently hearing the correct usage on the part of the mother, the child eventually drops his or her incorrect form while perhaps communicatively effective or grammatically wrong. It's also true that the children do not learn language just from the mother. If siblings are present, then they too form a source of input for the child. And sibling means sister, brother, do not correct others or simplify their language for the younger ones among them, right? So then the logical problems of acquisitions. What is this logical? The logical problem of language acquisition is that it would seem impossible to learn anything about a certain language without first already knowing something about language in general. Like, what is this logical problem of, for example, if a child doesn't know at all about the language, that what kind of language is this, how does its grammar work, and what are its different parts that are attached to this particular language, but still he learns actually language. This is a logical problem of acquisitions, right? That the child must know what to expect in language before he or she can actually order the data he or she is presented with in his own surrounding. and ascribe meanings to the word he, she, but still learning is taking place. So this is really a logical problem with acquisitions. And then the evidence of deaf children. Deaf children means who cannot hear, start by babbling and cooing, but this soon starts peters out because they have no linguistics input. However, they would seem to cease on the other communication system. The interesting point here is that the children usually learn the sign language more perfectly than the people from which they learn it. I mean, this is said about the deaf children. All right. Then we have the evidence of pigeon. Actually, let me explain. As you remember, I think in the last time lecture, I just used the term pigeons in Creoles. Well, pigeons is basically used for the language speakers who do not know the language of others, and pidgin is also actually called a contact language. So this comes actually as a result of speakers of other languages who do not have who do not have knowledge of other language, but then they try to develop a very simplified and easy to understand contact language through which they interact, and mostly this takes place among the traders, and this is also termed as a trade language, because they come up with such basic such basic terms from other language which help them to communicate and interact. Here, pigeons actually children who have very poor input in their surrounding tends to be creative in their use of language. Mean that when they are not actually exposed to very linguistic enrichment, so any category which they deem essential but which are not present in the input from the environment are then invented by the children then come up and to invent actually such things. This has happened historically in those colonies of European power where a generation was cut off from its natural linguistic background and only supplied with very poor unstructured English, Spanish and Dutch as input in childhood. So such input, known technically as a pidgin, was then expanded and refined grammatically by the children of the next generation, and then is known in linguistics as a Creole. In simple words, when pidgin, a very common, very basic language, very basic contact language, when it develops, it evolves actually its grammatical maturity, it becomes grammatically perfect, and then such developed form of pidgin is known as Creole. Here, one can see that if linguistic medium of their environment is deficient, children create the structure which they feel are liking, going on their own abstract innate knowledge of the language. And the application of both the cases is that the children look for language, and if they do not find it, they create it somehow, and they have a system of communication. In this sense, language is a true instinct, and thus then we can also talk about certain things which we normally come across in psycholinguistics. Is there a language gene? This is actually a question normally put up here. There is a pathological medical condition called specific language impairment, abbreviated SLI, which covers a range of defects, all of which have in common the children continually make grammatical mistakes in their mother tongue. It is they would seems to be unaware of the existence of grammatical rules. Now, is the Canadian linguist Myrna Gopnik has shown in her study of a family in Britain, some 16 of 30 members over 3 generations have suffered from the defect, and this would seems to imply that it is genetically transferred. It looks like a defective gene which is dominant in the family, which would also imply that the ability to grasp the rules of grammar in first language acquisition is genetically encoded. So, after this study, we can say that there might be some defective genes which is dominant in the family, right? And another question that is there: is the language faculty separate from other cognitive ability? There is one major evidence for this, that is the case. Williams syndrome. Williams syndrome is a medical condition in which the patients are quite severely retarded, is both children and adults, and have difficulties counting properly or carrying out simple tasks like tying the shoelaces. Williams syndrome means that the children are actually, the patients are retarded. They are slow in doing these things, like other physical work, like tying of shoelaces. However, such people are good speakers of their native languages and just show a slight tendency to overgeneralize. Means, but their linguistics abilities are not that much retarded. Is actually, they do them very well, and they are more prone. They frequently make use of overgeneralizations. They might say speak for spoke, like for overgeneralization, like as I said, that for example the ed form, because they know that ed is used with the second form, so they just go for that, right? For overgeneralization, they have a good command of grammatical rules, which shows that their language faculty is intact. Means that due to the Williams syndrome, their linguistics capabilities remains intact, unaffected, right? So this implication of this is that our ability to speak language is separate from other cognitive abilities, right? So then how language is transmitted? We don't want to talk in detail here, but to put simply, children do not have access to the competence of their parents. So language transmission genetically doesn't take place, right? But however, you see that linguistic input from parents in shape of performance, abstraction of structure, which already the children have, right? In internalization competence of the next generations, right? So this is actually this normally takes place there, but I think we talk about it later, because this is it would become more longer then. So I just move on to the important things there. For example, you must remember that language acquisition for any generation of children consists of achieving mastery in four main areas. Since in this part here, in this part of lecture on psycholinguistics, we are basically and primarily talking of language acquisition for any generation. So language acquisitions for any generation of children, with irrespective if a child is from UK, from US, from China, from Portuguese, from Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and blah blah, are from here, from this part. So language acquisition, with irrespective of their age, with irrespective actually of their nationality, take place here. This is what, in these four main areas, a set of syntactic rules which specify how sentences are built up out of phrases and phrases out of words. Syntactic rules, which is there, and a set of morphological rules, and the children actually are being exposed to acquiring such thing, a set of morphological rules which specify how words are built up out of morphemes, grammatical units smaller than the word, all right? A set of phonological rules which specify how words, phrases, and sentences are pronounced, and a set of semantic rules which specify how words, phrases, and sentences are interpreted. It means that what their meaning is. So such acquisition and such things like syntactic, morphological, phonological, and semantic rules are just given to children. And then we talk about competence and performance. Competence, obviously, since I showed you the picture of Chomsky, so the credit, this competence is credited to him. According to Chomsky, in his aspects of the theory of syntax, this is the abstract ability of an individual to speak the language which she has learned his native language in his or her childhood. The competence of a speaker is unaffected by such factors as nervousness, temporary loss of memory, speech error, etc. These later phenomena are entirely within the domain of performance, which refers to the process of applying one's competence in the act of speaking. Bear in mind that competence also refers to the ability to judge if a sentence is grammatically well formed. It is an unconscious ability, right? Sometime this competence enables you to give you the sense of well formedness of any sentence, right? But remember, this is unconscious ability. Performance, obviously, the actual production of language, is opposed to the knowledge about the structure of one's narrative, which a speaker is internalizing during his childhood. Stages of very important part of the lecture. Stages of language acquisitions. Here it's very important. I'm going to talk about the stages which children pass through in the first 5 years of their lives. And for instance, up to 2 word stage only nouns and verbs occur. No child begins by using conjunctions or prepositions, although she will have heard these word classes in his or her environment. Another characteristic is overextension. Children always begin acquiring semantics by overextending meaning. For instance, by using the word dog. For example, when they see the word, when they see the animal dog for the time, then they use dog for all animal. If the first animal they are confronted with is a dog, or by calling all males papa, or by using spoon for all items of cutlery. So the generalizations here is that the children move from general to particular. To begin with, the language is undifferentiated on all linguistics level. With time, they introduce more and more distinction as they are repeatedly confronted with these from their surrounding. Increasing distinctions in language may well be linked to increasing cognitive development. The more distinctions come in your language, so you are more prone to the cognitive development. The more the discriminating the child's perceptions and understanding of the world, the more he or she will strive to reflect in this. So this is again here this is the linguistic development that takes place, you see, in children from 0 to 3 months. Organic sound, crying and cooing, all right, beginning of in from 4 to 5th month, beginning of the babbling phrase. I'll show you some words that what is babbling and what is cooing and what is crying, right? So the first comprehensive words, then from 10 months to 1 year, the first comprehensible word. After this follow 1 word, 2 word, and many word sentences. The only word stage is known as holophrastic. 1 word stage is termed as holophrastic stage. And then we have telegraphic speech, which is refers to the speech with only nouns and verbs. Telegraphy means that you do not find the use of auxiliary am or is or are, but only telegraph. For example, if there is a papa is eating, so you might find the children they might be saying that papa eating, right? So the telegraphic stage is that in which we do not see any auxiliary. And then you see in 2.6 year, 2 years and 6 months, inflection occurs, negations, interrogative and imperative sentences, like inflections, like for example man, men, right? And then the additions of is at the right places, which mostly occurs actually at this stage. Then negations can also takes place here. Interrogative and imperative sentences we do experience at this stage. And then in the age of 3, a vocabulary of about 1,000 words develop in a child, and then the main syntactic rules have been acquired by the age of 5. These divisions of early period of first language acquisition are approximate and vary from individual to individual, but most approximately, but mostly, most frequent. That's why I mentioned. I want to just to share some videos where you can understand what is babbling and how this crying and cooing in communication take place there. Now see, this video here. The video, I just click the video and it's coming. It takes some time because of the load. Now look at this child. You can find this child. How does this child actually make some sounds? See. I think you are not hearing it. I don't know what happens, but I will share these videos with you. Oh yes. No, it's babbling. What is babbling? Babbling is a rapid way of speech, and which involves the activities of the child in a rapid way, in a foolish way as well, which doesn't mean anything. Now see, it involves the child more active. The child is quite active, and he is making this sound there. But it doesn't mean anything. It is just shown as a reaction there. Now you see there, the child. Yes, you see the child is actually making such sounds. Yes, you see, a child, a baby is this is called baby. And now this, I am just going to show you, a video here. Thank you due to the
Babies
video,
learn
and
a
I'm
lot their
also
first year
sharing.
of life.
Now see.
By their first birthday, a baby will be able to follow simple directions
That's a candle. Can you blow it out?
and might even say a word or two. There's a lot you can do to help them get to this point from their first newborn cry. Babies are constantly soaking up new information. They start learning right at birth. By talking, playing, and reading with your baby, you can help them learn about their world.
Do you like it when I rub your back?
Long before they say their first words, babies are building communication skills. Communication is made up of 2 parts, receptive and expressive skills. Receptive skills are what babies take in,
It's time for your bottle.
and expressive skills are what babies put out. These 2 parts of communication are equally important, and both begin to develop at birth. Baby learns receptive and expressive skills by watching and imitating you.
Mama. Oh, good talking.
It's important to respond when baby cries, coos, or tries to communicate with you in any way.
What's wrong?
This shows them that you are listening and that communication is a 2-way street.
That's better.
Describe to baby what you are doing.
Let's get a fresh diaper on you.
Talk in a slow, sing-songy voice.
Are you smiling at me?
Point out objects while you talk.
Sock. This is your sock.
Respond to and imitate baby's sounds.
Baba. Yes, this is a ball.
And describe pictures while you read together.
Here's an elephant. He is big and gray.
All of these activities will help baby learn new words. Keep track of your baby's communication development. Make note of important milestones. By 3 months, your baby should hold eye contact with you. Turn their head towards sound, quiet or smile in response to your voice, and make sounds other than crying. Is baby putting everything in their mouth? Good. This helps them learn how their lips, tongue, and jaw work. By 6 months, baby should begin babbling, like ba 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 and wah wah wah, and use babbling to get attention. Around this time, baby will enjoy games like peekaboo and fear loud and unexpected noises.
Achoo! I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
By 9 months, your baby should be adding new sounds when babbling and look at people and familiar objects when named.
Where's Teddy?
Baby will begin to use body language to let you know what they want.
You want to be picked up? Come here.
And they will continue to learn new skills through imitation.
Good job.
By 12 months, baby should use mama and dada to call mom and dad, make sounds back and forth with others, and respond to simple directions. At this time, baby will pay attention to where you are looking and pointing,
Look at the doggy.
and maybe saying their first 1 or 2 words. You can help baby learn even more words by building on the ones they already know.
Yeah, big doggy.
If you're concerned that your baby is not reaching milestones, trust your instincts. Talk to your healthcare provider, and don't hesitate to schedule a screening with a speech-language pathologist. For more information, please visit pathways.org, call 1-800-955-CHILD, or contact us
Okay,
at
this
friends
is
at
actually the source.
pathways.org.
I just showed you, in fact, practically there, right? And you see, this was actually something there on it, and obviously insights from language acquisition. Remember this is unconscious knowledge that we get actually during the language acquisitions time, and I have just highlighted these, but I would try to move actually to the rest you must read yourself, because I have just underlined this for you people, and these are the terms which I have discussed in the previous lecture. Here, insight from language acquisition. Remember, I'm just quickly, no child makes a conscious decision to learn a language. No child has ever refused to learn the language spoken in his or her environment. Acquisition is unconscious and can be compared with the unfolding of other instincts, for instance that of binaural hearing or telescopic visions. All right, and then just to put things simply, the language faculty is innate, so that the child can immediately process the language she hears in the surrounding. Remember, insights from language acquisitions in general, one can maintain that after puberty, the ability to acquire language in the technical sense of learning with native speaker competence drops off radically and is never gained again. And there are 2 major hypotheses about why this should be the case. Hypotheses may well be related to each other. Due to the lateralization of the brain shortly before the puberty, the brain loses flexibility and receptiveness, at least for unconscious learning. By lateralizations, one means the fixing of function of one brain to the half. And with the sexual maturity at puberty, strong hormonal changes take place with human. These lead to a reduction of playful element, which is typical of children. The spontaneous behavior of children decreases drastically with the onset of puberty, and a certain rigidity is characteristic of adult vis-a-vis children, and vis-a-vis means face to face or oppose here, and this also affects the ability to learn languages. So what do we know at the end of the day? Now we can read this, we can view the stages of native language acquisition in more detail. Children hear fragments of language in their environment. They then abstract the underlying structure behind what they hear. Children then internalize the structure, and they use these. Well, we come now to the most important part here. You will understand more clearly. Constructing features of first and second language acquisitions here. FLA and SLA, these are the technical terms which will frequently come during this. In first language acquisitions and second language acquisitions, in first language acquisition, no conscious choice made by learning, and in first language acquisitions you find very rapid and relatively slow. No instruction is usual. High competence reach, competence attained varies greatly. And then possible reason for differences between FLA and SLA. SLA occurs against the background of FLA interference hypothesis. FLA takes place before puberty, adulthood, remember, and FLA takes place before lateralization of brain, just before puberty. And now you can find the structure of human minds. Here you find it here. Thought processes and all, mostly roughly you are given where the particular part of the human brain works. This is another diagram. You find it, see it, and you can find it like cortex, behavior, feelings you can find in the mind here. Motoric coordinations, which relates to your body parts coordination, sensations there, auditory processing there, hearing there, general information processing there, sight and balance and spinal cord. And again another diagrams. So thank you very much. This was actually for today. It was very hard and it made me so tired, and indeed when you give technical information to the student, it makes you tired. And this resources for this lecture, this is already shared with you people, so I hope that you will look at this full lecture, and I hope that you will do your best. So thank you very much. I should stop over here because almost 2 GB data has been actually recorded to you people here, and it would take enormous time to upload it on YouTube. Thank you very much, and hope that you will listen to it. So nice of you.